form that the IP was protected, but how it was important to commercially exploit the technology or, is that right? Am I saying that right?
Foundation of business and the future.
And then lastly, we were to look at our own research and ask whether should our or could our IP, sorry, our research be protected in some way. So I'll start with my first slide. So I've defined my field as molecular virology, but I tend to work, I always work with viruses, so I think it's appropriate. And considering all the forms of IP, the only one that I really felt was most relevant were patents. But even thinking that, I didn't think there was much molecular virology sort of protected in any way, like by patents. Because the only thing I could really think of were vaccines or drug treatments for viruses. But more fiddly things about sequencing, I'm not really sure how much of that's actually protected by IP.
What about gene therapy?
Gene therapy, yeah, that's true. That's another one. So what's that?
Well, assays or anything like that?
Assays, yeah. I couldn't find any examples of diagnostic kits that were protected by IP, like patents. So, but I think a lot of those are based on patents. There's some aspect of them might be covered, but they're all maybe licensed out, or it's just an in-house thing. Those are the things I might think there might be some potential for design if they have a way that assays set up, and then they might have certain shape wells that might help. But I couldn't really find any examples. But and I guess the second point here with confidential information, trade secrets, I thought there's probably a lot of IP that is within a lab, and it's just how the lab actually operates, like their protocols, and they might be a diagnostic service. So I know a lot of public health laboratories ask our lab for help, and we offer more of a service, that we have protocols, and we have each individual person has the way they do things and techniques. All that stuff you can't really protect, besides just keeping it to yourself and doing the work for them. So we might get sort of brought in as a service or a consult on to get something done. Two examples, they're actually very similar. First one I thought I'd talk about for the reason swine flu's around and stuff, like Tamiflu. So they're actually, like a lot of these two examples, there's more than one patent that they're often protected by. All these big drug companies have a range of patents, and together they sort of form a product. The patent at the top, I gave examples, sort of the original patent which describes this novel class of compounds that have an inhibitory effect on the neuraminidase in the virus. It's originally owned by Gilead, but the technology has been licensed to Roche. And I guess this is the strategy. If Gilead's not necessarily in, making drugs and stuff, if they discover something like this compound, they license the product to Roche, who's the big pharmaceutical, has the means to take that product to market. But I did think this sort of strategy was common, and probably, it's really common in my field, that the idea of patenting some technology and then licensing out to the most appropriate company to take to market, and you just get some royalties or just the licensing of that. The second example, the HPV vaccine, it's human papillomavirus, the cervical cancer vaccine. There's two forms of it, and I think this is an example of the cross-licensing, where they've got two companies making the same product, or two versions of the same product. But it's a very similar thing to the Tamiflu. The technology around it's based on a few patents. One aspect covers how the virus particles are made. Another one's how it actually becomes immunogenic as a vaccine. But each of the technology are patented, and then they're licensed out to the most appropriate people to make the drugs. Then with my research, I thought, should my research be protected? And basically, I thought everyone should answer yes to that, where appropriate. Because you don't know where things are going to come, and so if there's any commercial benefit, then you probably protect what even if you think it could have some benefit later on, you probably should think about protecting it. Two aspects of my research, could they be protected? I for the first one, which is my molecular epidemiology work, we're basically screening for what strains of virus are circulating in the population. Now, there's no real benefit in patenting that stuff. There's nothing that probably could be patented of that in any way. But there is, part of that work can go towards, say, developing a vaccine. But all that work is going to get published in journal articles, and then a company can refer to that themselves later on. So there's no benefit really for us. The second aspect is, we look at how viruses replicate through the enzyme they use to replicate. So, if you think things like PCR, these techniques which are used so widespread now, they're originally based on enzymes with novel properties. And, we are doing some of the stuff where we're tweaking the protein a little way to make it work faster or, make it more stable and stuff like that. So I think those aspects could potentially be patented. We just need to actually do this first. So that's my little presentation.
That was very good. Any comments? Well, should my research be protected? The answer, everyone should write yes, and only from the perspective that yes means you're having a look, and that's what we want you to do, is to have a look into what your research findings are, and to think about how could these be translated into some sort of socio-economic, environmental benefit, and if appropriate, if intellectual property protection is appropriate to allowing that to happen, then you need to consider it. Okay. Next is Aisha.
Yes, Aisha.
Sorry, you want to make a comment there?
Okay, mine's very brief compared to John's. What do you press again?
F5.
I'm also trying to bunch them in sort of areas, so rather than go from bio to electrical or physical and chemistry back. So yeah, we did. Yeah. Oh, there's going to be some more chemistry. That was just a total
Last week.
Okay, so my field of study is bone biology or osteoporosis, and I think that patents are the most prevalent form of IP in this field, and this is because there's a potential of discovering products, as in drugs, and then you can commercialise these products and then you earn money. So for example, the kind of things that can be discovered, like the products, are drugs that reduce the activity of the cells that eat away the bone, so that causes osteoporosis. So, yeah. And two examples. I'll first start with the first one, because that's not really in my field, but I thought it was interesting anyway. This thing called alendronate sodium. It's a drug used to inhibit bone resorption, and a lot of osteoporotic patients use this. And in the question it asked, how is this patent protected? Maybe I understood this wrong. It's an Australian and international patent. I don't know, is that? That's what it wrote in the documents that I looked at.
international patent.
The marketing documents or the...
Yeah.
When you're in IP Australia, you click on the one that you find, and then you get a document number, and then you've got all these different documents.
Yeah, so there'll be corresponding patents in other jurisdictions.
So I don't know if that's right, but that's what it wrote.
You will be able to look at that, and you will be able to see which countries, which actual jurisdictions they're seeking protection, and that'll give you an idea of what they feel is, the sort of limit of the coverage that they need to protect and keep someone else out from coming in. Because if you don't get a patent in a particular jurisdiction, say you choose one country, Thailand, I'm not going to get protection in Thailand. Yeah. And there was nothing to stop a company in Thailand actually manufacturing it and selling that product in Thailand. Is that right? That's right. But is it going to be worth a company to do that in Thailand if they can't actually sell it to the US or whatever?
I thought when you got an international patent